Picture it. It's Saturday night, the popcorn's popped, the blankets and pillows have been gathered on the couch, and the introduction to your favorite rom-com flashes across the screen. Perhaps you went for a classic or something new, but there's a good chance you're watching something where the stereotypical good girl falls madly in love with the bad boy. From Grease to 10 Things I Hate About You, some of the greatest romantic comedies of all time fall into this category, and society has embraced this trope with open arms. But what does this trope say about us, and how does it impact our real-world relationships? In order to answer this question, let's take a look at what makes a main male character a bad boy, what the female main characters look like in these shows, the origins of the trope, and the impacts it has on multiple generations of movie lovers. When I say the words bad boy, what do you think of? Do you see Johnny from Dirty Dancing? Shane West from A Walk to Remember? Or maybe you just rewatched the Kissing Booth trilogy on Netflix and immediately think of Noah Flynn. There's probably some commonalities between the images we've all conjured. Tall, dark, and handsome? That's a must. Tattoos? Probably a good chance of that. Morally gray? I'd be willing to bet on that one. According to dictionary.com, a bad boy is, quote, a man who does not conform to approved standards of behavior, especially in a particular sphere of activity, end quote. But when it comes to romantic comedies, a bad boy is the main love interest who's got a moody personality, pushes boundaries, and has a tragic past. He probably stands out in a crowd, he's quiet, and he's got the potential to be redeemed by love. And who's going to love him? The female love interest, of course. There are several figures who fill this role in romantic comedies and in other forms of media. One of the most common is the good girl. When asked what makes a good girl, a group of middle-class girls at the Girls Leadership Institute responded with characteristics such as quiet, perfect, sheltered, good grades, polite, respectful, and organized, just to name a few. The director of the Girls Leadership Institute wrote that, quote, the good girl is socially and academically successful, smart and driven, pretty and kind, but she was also an individual who aimed to please, towed the line, and didn't take risks. She repressed what she really thought, and did not handle her mistakes with humor, end quote. Think of Sandy Olsen in the 1978 movie Grease. She pretty much matches the description provided by those at the Girls Leadership Institute. She's pretty, kind, smart, and above all, chaste. Her identity as a good girl is charming, and it attracts the bad boy, Danny Zuko. Another character that commonly fills this role is the feminist. She's a stark contrast to the good girl, and she's strong-willed, intelligent, and she isn't afraid to speak her mind. The main character of one of my favorite romantic comedies fits this description to a T. In 10 Things I Hate About You, Kat Stratford, the antisocial older sister of Bianca who refuses to date, becomes romantically involved with the school bad boy, Patrick Verona. She's outspoken, prudish, and she's always willing to challenge opposing opinions. These are just two examples of the women who fall in love with bad boys, but they both accomplish the same goal in the end. They tame the bad boy and live happily ever after. Like many cinematic trends, the bad boy didn't start off as the redeemable character present in modern cinema. According to The Take, quote, in the 1930s and 40s, bad boys were the men in gangster movies, James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart, playing outlaws, seducers, guys who broke the laws and hearts at the same time. But social deviance wasn't acceptable during this time period, and the protagonists were encouraged to find upstanding gentlemen or ladies. For example, in the 1930s, comedies of manners were particularly popular. Think somewhat like Cinderella. Or the 1934 film, It Happened One Night, where a wealthy woman falls in love with a financially unstable newspaper reporter. It wasn't until the 1950s and 60s that these men were depicted as tragic figures with hearts of gold. But still, they weren't the stars of rom-coms or even romance movies. But the 70s is where the bad boy becomes the center of these films, and we get some of the classic bad boy romantic comedies, including Grease and Dirty Dancing from this time. The trope continued to be popular from then on, and it continues to center around romantic comedies to this day. Recent movies such as She's the Man, Crazy Stupid Love, The Kissing Booth, Tangled, the Princess Diaries, particularly the second one, all involve this trope in some way. While bad boy romances are great sources of entertainment, the reality is far from happy endings. In fact, it probably closely resembles a nightmare than the Disney fairy tale most of these movies depict. And these depictions have real-life consequences. For one thing, rom-coms with the bad boy trope normalize abusive relationships. While the bad boy might be attractive, rich, or misunderstood, many are also inclined towards violence. Take Noah Flynn from The Kissing Booth. Here he is fighting in one of the first scenes. Here he is fighting on the beach. Here he uses violence to manipulate the main female character. And his brother even assumes that he hit the main female character.
Did you do that to her?
What did you just say?
I said, did you do that to her? Did you hit Elle?
You really think that I would hit her?
Well, I wouldn't put it past you.
These are all signs of an abusive relationship, and treating it as not only okay, but also as romantic is deeply concerning. The bad boy trope also teaches men and women that when a woman says no, she might not actually mean it. I'm sure you're all thinking it, but the best example of this is from The Notebook. This entire movie is problematic, but the fact that Noah, Ryan Gosling's character, refuses to take no for an answer is a defining feature of the bad boy trope, even if some don't think his character falls into this trope. And on top of all of that, women in these fictional relationships are depicted as fixing or saving these broken men.
People are not made out of nuts and bolts, and thus cannot be fixed easily with, say, a wrench. Quote-unquote, fixing a human being often requires a lot of internal work, often involves therapy, it involves recollecting on the past and how potential traumas have affected a person. Relationships are built on respect and equality. And if the girl in the situation is constantly working on fixing her dark, brooding, enigmatic man, there's not respect there. He's treating her as a medical professional, as a therapist, and she is catering to his every need because she is convinced, she has been told by the media that this is what love is. Love is fixing someone. And that's not what love is.
Overall, the bad boy trope creates unrealistic expectations for real-life relationships, and it has the potential to lead to and justify toxic relationships. It's easy to push this off as a problem present only in fiction, but these depictions permeate reality.
The stories that we are told via books, our screens, and advertising build identities, determine behaviors, and forge our dreams. American researchers found that stories repeated in our minds actually interact with our biology. Our brains need shortcuts to simplify and organize information and data constantly coming at us. They impact how we view the world and make meaning from what we perceive. The narrative we tell and are told has the potential to create and continue prejudiced beliefs by those few who dominate the storytelling sphere. As of 2018, the average American spends over 11 hours a day watching, listening, reading, and interacting with media. Therefore, mass media has the power to challenge and change perceptions.
Or, in the case of romantic comedies, it has the potential to reinforce toxic behavior. Just take a look at some of these YouTube videos. Both of these are produced outside of romantic comedies, and they are serious videos instructing men on how to be a bad boy. They're filled with misogyny and sexism. What's worse is that these videos have hundreds of thousands of views. Men are encouraged to adopt the bad boy persona in order to attract girls, and in turn, women are encouraged to accept this behavior. Carolina R., a survivor of an abusive relationship and the author of the book Bad/Tender, describes how her abuser utilized his bad boy image to justify his toxic actions. For a long time, she believed that her, quote, ex was just a bad boy. She further said, quote, "We've grown up with the films and stories where the bad boy becomes good in the end. So when you meet someone who's a bad boy, you think he might be mean to everyone else, but he'll be nice to you. You can change him." End quote. She described how growing up with these misconceptions made it difficult for her to seek help. She said, quote, "I'd constantly ask myself how, as a strong feminist woman, I'd let this happen. I thought that it was my fault it had happened. I'd let myself down. made a wrong choice. Carolina is not alone in this experience, and the problem will persist so long as the media we consume normalizes and encourages this behavior. So, next Saturday night, when you sit down with all your friends to watch your all-time favorite rom-com, be mindful of the tropes utilized by the plot. Actively analyze the messages being sent and the behaviors that are normalized.